All right, cool. We're live. Great. Awesome. So thank you, Michael, for having me here today. Sorry, everybody, for all the technical difficulties. It's I'll blame it on the Google product. I don't get to do that very often. So, anyway, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Joey Aiello. I am a program manager on the PowerShell team, and I'm currently running or owning everything related to PowerShell 6.0, PowerShell Core. Basically, those are one and the same, which we'll be talking about in brief, a little bit of brevity today, but and OpenSSH as well, the Win32 port of OpenSSH that we're doing, both server and client, along with SFTP and SCP and all the stuff that you'd expect with OpenSSH that's part of the official project. So that's sort of what I do. How much time do I have, Michael? Michael, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yeah, how much time do I have?
You have as long as you'd like to take. I think they'll kick us out at 9 p.m., so we have like forever.
Okay, how long do people want me to be here?
I anticipate they'll want you to keep talking about PowerShell Core and OpenSSH pretty much the whole time. Or as long as you would like to,
No, totally. I'm not taking. I drove into work today, no connector to go run to or anything like that, so all is well. So I'm going to start talking about where we're going with PowerShell 6, what are sort of how we're thinking about things right now, why we've made some of the design decisions we've made, and then how you guys can really engage with us more closely on PowerShell 6. I really don't see it as Microsoft's product anymore. This is very much a community open source project that all of us are working on. And I'm going to be showing just like a quick demo run through of some of the things that, minor fixes that are instrumental to making PowerShell work better, especially in a collective. So we're getting all these contributions from people in code, issues, tests, documentation that's just allowing us to move at a much faster clip than we were in the past. Because you guys get to sort of set the prioritization. So I'm just going to go ahead and screen share and just sort of walk through. I know I can't see the crowd, but maybe you can tell me here, Michael. How many people in the room have used PowerShell 6 in some capacity already?
Show of hands. One, if you count me. Looks like.
How many people are in the room?
One, if you. No, there's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. About 8 of us.
Okay, cool. And how many of you folks do some kind of management either from a MacBook or on a Linux or against a Linux server?
2, 3 of us.
Okay. Okay, cool. So I just want to be clear too.
Clarifying question from the group. Using PowerShell to manage those things, or just in general?
No, not necessarily.
Not necessarily. So 4. Half.
4. Okay.
Fully half.
Okay. Cool. So yeah, I mean, we kind of see that's the way the world's going, right? Like nobody runs a Windows shop anymore or a Linux shop, and if you do, you probably know that you're starting to get pressure from management to consolidate these things, or you've got that hipster guy across the org that's using Ansible or Chef or Puppet or whatever to do some stuff. I know you're standing up a Chef thing right now, Michael. So it's the world we live in. We all use different tools. We all mix and match. I have a Google phone and a Windows computer, and I run PowerShell on a CentOS VM. Right? There's not really any rhyme or reason to not just having all these things work everywhere now. So I'm just going to go ahead and do, for those of you that are unfamiliar with PowerShell 6, a brief walkthrough here of the repository that we have, so that we can sort of just get a sense of what's going on, where all this stuff exists. And Michael, make sure that everybody in the room knows they can stop me at any time here. I am, more than happy to answer questions if things don't make sense. If everyone's bored and they already know these things, we can just go on to something else. So really, yeah, just make sure you're passing through the interruptions to me.
Sure.
they're more than welcome and highly encouraged. So this is the GitHub PowerShell repository, right? This is at github.com/PowerShell/PowerShell. You do not need a GitHub account to come and look at this, to download things here. You do need a GitHub account to file issues, to contribute code, and really to engage with us in any kind of meaningful way. So if you don't have a GitHub account, I highly recommend you create one. Depending on your organization, they may, say, you need to have a personal one. I share one between my corporate and personal identity, and there are ways that Microsoft, covers me with legal rights and all that sort of thing. But get a GitHub account. Basically, do it. There's no reason not to have one. So the readme.md right here breaks down everything you need to know to get started in the repository, regardless of what your level of knowledge is for PowerShell. So if you have no idea what PowerShell is, we throw you into our Getting Started documentation. If you do and you just want to get it, these are all the platforms that we currently support. And so a couple of these, as I said, were contributed by our community. So Arch Linux came in from a community user that just happened to be an Arch enthusiast. The original Docker image that we first had that stood up was from a contributor, and this app image format came in from a contributor, which is really cool. It's sort of a Docker image that's more of a file base, like a binary, so you can just execute it on arbitrary Linux distributions, carries its dependencies with it. So, but for the rest of these, we support macOS 10.12. Unfortunately, 10.11 and earlier does not work, so you do have to upgrade. And we are firmly committed to remaining having support down level to Windows 7 in 2008 R2. This should actually say /server 2008 R2. I should get that fixed, but. Unfortunately, we had an issue in our latest release that we broke Windows 7 support, but we are going to get it fixed. It's going to come back out. But if you want any of these things, they're very easy to download. These are direct links to the MSIs here, but we also support X-copyable downloads. So if you go to this little releases button right here, you can actually grab a zip of PowerShell 6 that doesn't require any installation whatsoever. I can just click this thing, download it. It's like a 45 megabyte zip or 42. I can drop it onto my desktop and it will just, which is really cool. It's got all of its dependencies with it. You'll see there's a PowerShell.exe. No rebooting. No, which version do I have? I got to make sure my scripts work on this new one before so I don't break anything. No, you can start trying this thing out on your desktop in 20 seconds or less. So there's really no reason to just not give your scripts a try.
Joey?
We've also got here our community dashboard. This is giving us the statistics. Yep, can you hear me?
Yep.
Quick question for you, Joey.
Yeah, totally.
In the past, some of our boxes are 2008 R2, and we have things like SharePoint that will not like a .NET upgrade to .NET 4. If this is standalone, is that fully supported even on the older 2008 boxes? It can still be standalone.
Yeah. So this was one of our highest priority goals when we came out with PowerShell 6, and that was to make sure that we did not impact existing installations of Windows PowerShell or .NET Framework on the box when you install PowerShell 6. So one of the major benefits that PowerShell Core gives us is that you can have N side-by-side versions of PowerShell Core. We carry, or excuse me, not PowerShell Core, .NET Core. So we carry .NET Core with us. You'll notice in this thing, we've got a bunch of DLLs that are just generic .NET DLLs. And that's because we explicitly do not touch the .NET framework in Windows. We do not touch anything in System32. And so this, you essentially can go and install this to a machine. Like I said, install a zip, or even with the MSI, we install the program files rather than System32. And it's not going to touch any of your stuff. If I'm on this machine and I type WinR PowerShell, this is PowerShell 5.1, right? It's what you'd expect. I've got PowerShell version 2 installed. You notice copyright 2009, right? This thing works, right? And I've also got an additional shortcut here on my start bar for PowerShell 6.0 beta 1, right? And they're all running side by side. If I run a script in PowerShell 6, I'm only going to have the commandlets that are available in PowerShell 6, right? If I run a get command I've got 501 commands there. Some of those are modules that I've got loaded. But if I am over here on PowerShell 5, excuse me, you know, obviously I've got a whole bunch of other commands. So yeah, the point here was that you could try out PowerShell 6 without breaking your machines, without losing support for Exchange or SharePoint or System Center, or, you know, these guys that said, hey, we don't support WMF installs. You know, they might not support PowerShell 6, but you can at least install PowerShell 6 to a machine without fearing that those scripts, you know, aren't going to continue to work in the older versions of Windows PowerShell. Does that make sense?
Yeah, that makes sense. Thank you.
Cool, no problem. I should caveat here, I didn't do a little terminology at the beginning here. Windows PowerShell is what we're calling the full CLR Windows-only version of PowerShell. So it's always been Windows PowerShell in the box, right? If I go here, Windows PowerShell, that guy is full CLR. And you'll note that it's the PS Edition desktop. That means that it's the full CLR Windows PowerShell version. PowerShell Core is the core CLR-based version of PowerShell. And in its current PS version table, we have the PS Edition Core. Right now, the current plan of record is for PowerShell 6 to be core only and to not release any new major versions of Windows PowerShell. That's not set in stone, but for the reasons that we just listed, that we want to move the world forward onto .NET Core, we want to be X-copyable, we want to work cross-platform, all these sorts of things. Putting the innovation in PowerShell Core is kind of our top priority right now. That's not to say that there might not be a Windows PowerShell 5.2 or 5.3 that carries some bug fixes, or, you know, where we add a critical feature that enough customers ask for. And it certainly doesn't mean that we won't continue to service and maintain Windows PowerShell. You know, it's a supported product. It will be for as long as Windows 10 is supported. So, you know, we're firmly committed there, but where we're really driving all the innovation and the fun is in .NET Core. And while that sounds really scary right now because the modules and scripts don't work yet in .NET Core or on PowerShell Core, I've got some fun here that hopefully will assuage some of those fears. So is everybody on the same page there? That all makes sense?
Yep, a lot of nods around the room.
I'm wishing that I could do like my face and screen share. I'm not sure if that's supported here. But yeah, I keep flipping back to the Hangouts to make sure everything's good, but it's just everybody looking at another copy of Michael's face. So yeah, woo. So we've also got links here to the chat on Gitter, you know, the Slack that you know, most of you are probably on already. How to build the thing, you know, if you're interested in contributing, you know, how do you get a clone of the repo and build it, and then really the contribution guide, developing and contributing. This is really a great place to start if you're looking to contribute. Don't be put off by the word developing here. Plenty of people have tons that they can contribute without command line knowledge of Git, without knowing how to code, without knowing a line of C#. You can help us. One of those ways is to file new issues, right? Our issue template, you know, we tell you, hey, you should check the known issues, check our FAQ, make sure that you know, give us some basic, how did I reproduce this? What did I expect to happen? What actually happened? What's my PS version table? Paste that in there. Obviously, search the existing issues here to make sure that you know, someone hasn't already filed your issue, but you'll see all kinds of names in here that are people that aren't MVPs, that I've never met, that are often, you know, very, very humble in their first issue filing, saying, hey, I'm not a developer, I don't know what, you know, if this is the right thing to do, but, you know, I've ran into this issue. We'll be nice to you. We're not going to bite your heads off. Please just err on the side of following the issue. You know, if anyone ever tells you you did something wrong, don't take it personally. We won't attack you or just, you know, correcting you so that, you know, gets done right next time. But never feel like, you know, we're frustrated or upset. Like this is for you to file issues. So please do that. For those of you that are developers, the contribution guide is very clear here in how to get started in contributing. For how to submit a pull request. I should also say we put contributions to documentation right up front. That's documentation both in our PowerShell docs repo and documentation in PowerShell the repo itself. Have CLI get installed, and you just go, hey, like, there's this bug here. This should say server 2008 R2, right? You can just go to the readme.markdown. If you're not me, this little edit button will say fork this project and edit this file in your fork. And you basically just click that button, creates a fork into your own account. So you create a copy essentially of our repository in your account. You make the change in the text, like you might say /server 2008 R2 or whatever, and then fix the formatting. I'm not going to do this because it's going to not create a pull request. It's going to just do it, and I don't want to do that. But you go down to the bottom, and this button will say, actually, this will say, create a new branch for this commit and start a pull request. That's what it will do in your repository without permissions to commit directly. And so you can just do that, and we're going to get a pull request. It's going to show up here in pulls, and we will just triage that pull request. We might tell you, oh, you need to change this one thing or whatever. It's not a big deal. So hopefully that isn't too basic knowledge for everybody in the room. I have only learned Git in the last year and a half, 2 years. So don't feel like this isn't something that anybody can pick up. We've also got Docker images here. So if you're experimenting with Docker at all, we have at the Docker Hub, Microsoft PowerShell, Docker images for everything we support, Windows Server Core, Nano Server, a bunch of different Linux distributions. Great for testing out as well without having to impact your environment. For those of you that are on Linux, we also support package managers on all these OSs. So like I just was on CentOS or Red Hat Linux. You can just add our package repository, and then you can do a sudo yum install PowerShell. We need to update our instructions, apparently. Somebody was asking me about homebrew support for Macs. Does anybody in the room have a MacBook, Michael?
Anybody with MacBook? No. Maybe somebody on the internet does, though.
We have.
Okay, yeah. I mean, we just have... Oh, it looks like we updated... Nope, this is instructions for the maintainers to continue updating the homebrew. So, like, if you just run these two commands, brew tap cask room cask, this gives you, like, homebrew casks, which I guess are like smaller, less popular packages, and then you do brew cask install PowerShell, but you've got PowerShell on your Mac. So
can I get PowerShell?
I'm trying to make this easier. We know that the WMF installs stink, having to do a reboot, and replacing the .NET framework version, not being able to try things at a time, all that. So we're trying to fix it here.
Is there a PowerShell package in Chocolatey yet? I haven't looked.
There is. It's pre-release, so it doesn't show up in the regular search results, but it's right here. It's maintained by Darwin. I believe his last name's Sonoy. I might have gotten that wrong. I apologize, Darwin, if I did. Maintains this here. He's awesome. He also maintains the package that we have as well. So, like it's exempt from moderation. There's more risk involved. You have to use this --pre tag. But yeah, this will get the latest version.
Cool.
So great. There's a million ways to install it. It works on every platform. Who cares? What does it do? Why is it better than 5.1? Well, one of the big reasons is that anything that you file as an issue, however minor, can be addressed just as quickly as anything else. And so I'm going to run through like a couple just like, holy crap, that's nice to have type demos. Some of these may be exciting for you. Some of them may be totally boring. But the point here is that these all were filed by community members and fixed by community members, often not the same person. And so, one other thing, if you are a developer, we have these up for grabs issues. So if you go to the labels here, you can look at up for grabs. These are all things that we're not currently working on that are kind of low-hanging fruit that may be pretty easy for a developer to come in and fix. Or if you're just learning for the first time, I'm by no means a competent C# developer. So occasionally I peek into here and see if I can, kind of grind my teeth on, or cut my teeth on something here. And that's exactly what these people did. And so, for instance, right here, and by the way, for those of you that don't know this is VS Code running PowerShell 6. So the VS Code PowerShell plugin also supports arbitrary versions of PowerShell, including 5.0, 5.1. Actually supports downloadable 3.0. Excuse me. But you just go and change a little thing in your preferences here. Over here on the right, you'll see the PowerShell developer PowerShell XE path. I have it pointed to PowerShell 6. It's actually an array. You can give this a bunch of paths, and you can use as many versions of PowerShell as you want. Right here, just switch. Excuse me, I'm gonna drink a little water. So these are just some kind of cool things that people did. They added a leaf base and an extension parameter to the split path command. So we can, and VS Code supports F8 now. This is great. So I run F8. The path to split was pshome PowerShell.exe. Leaf base is the last node in the path without the extension. And this here is sort of the inverse of that, the last thing with just the extension. Small thing, super useful, so you don't have to do a bunch of regex. I actually think that Jeffrey Snover either opened this issue originally or commented on the pull request as it was getting implemented. But he was like super excited, totally uses this all the time now. Thanks to PowerCode for that one. I just met him up at PSCompU, really nice guy, Stefan. Another one from the Flying Corpse. I can't really demonstrate this because I don't have a proxy set up on my machine, but I assure you that -no proxy for invoke web request and invoke rest method now circumvents the built-in proxy settings. There was some discussion about the security concerns. It can only circumvent insofar as a typically privileged user would be allowed to do that. This one, get child item, this was from iSasanoff. Ilya has been one of our top contributors. We actually made him a maintainer earlier this year because he's been so active on the GitHub repository. This one basically fixed tab completion for select object, expand property, and exclude property. So prior to this, if I was in an old Windows PowerShell and I did select object, expand property, this would give me paths, which is useless. The same would be true of exclude property. Now in PowerShell 6, if I do the same, it actually looks earlier in the pipeline and figures out, oh, these are the properties that are on get child items output object. So really cool stuff. I know, I just heard a little applause there. I know it's little things, right? But like, these are things that we just don't always have the time to get around to because we're dealing with larger business priorities, and that's just, it's great that we can now ship these things lightning fast. So thanks, iSasanoff, for that one. Kit Holland, this one, a big impetus for doing PowerShell 6 is to improve REST-based scenarios, cloud-based scenarios, dealing better with JSON. We made a ton of bug fixes to convert to JSON, convert from JSON, invoke REST methods, so on and so forth. This is the old output of convert to JSON. That's a crap ton of white space. We're now using Newtonsoft.json, which means that when I do the same thing in PowerShell Core, I get a, what you'd expect, a base, prettified. I think we're just using Newtonsoft.json's prettify thing, but I would say this is leagues better than what we had before. Like, for instance, empty arrays are just 2 characters now instead of a line break and all this crap. So that's cool. I know. This was a small breaking change. This, again, I'm going to compare and contrast in the two. Like, if you look at this guy, there were certain cases where when you use convert to JSON, it would append this count object, or this count property, excuse me, which meant that if you did convert from JSON, it would, like, this wasn't item potent. You couldn't do to and from forever. You would keep getting this count object appended even though it wasn't on the original thing. We've fixed that. So convert to and from JSON are now item potent. I don't want that. If I do the same thing in PowerShell core, let's see if I can do this here. Nope, I am incapable of copy paste. Okay, so this guy now is idempotent, right? Because we don't append that count object. We just give you the 1, which is all we were getting in the first place. So this is great because it means you know, you can always trust when you're using convert to and from JSON that we're not you know, doing anything to the objects. It's a you know, a clean serialization and deserialization. That was from Pet Ser Al. By the way, if you guys are bored of this, I can stop. But these are just, I mean, I'm just so excited that like this is stuff that our community does for us.
Ken has a question.
Totally.
Go ahead.
Hey, Joey, can you hear me?
Yep.
On convert to JSON, when you convert, so basically not convert to, but convert from. So if I have a JSON string and I convert it from JSON to a custom object, that custom object, and I know this is just the difference between a custom object and a hash, or a hash of hashes, but the properties that it would spin up, you would have to traverse that if you were iterating over that object a little differently than if you were to try to do it maybe another way. Is there any look into the
I think I know what you're talking about. Essentially, like we weren't doing like loop unroll or object unrolling properly from the pipeline, I think. So
Correct.
If you were like one thing that that I always do is invoke reb request api.github.com. We can just get a nice little JSON object this way. Wow.
It's a few objects.
You're getting their whole.
Yeah, you got to break them both. That's
that is insane. That was why. That's a bug. Okay. Woo. Great. We're finding bugs in real time, and now this run space is dead.
And another bug. Can't control C.
Yeah, it's. Oh, now we go. Okay. Yeah, so that's a weird bug. I'm gonna write that down on my whiteboard real quick. Sorry, guys.
No, you're fine.
That's really strange. Because it broke in full CLR too. Like you think I feel like I would have tried that at some point. So yeah, if I look at what is it, raw content here. So that's a big JSON blob. Oh no, I want content actually. There's our JSON blob, and you're saying convert from JSON.
Yeah.
Very nicely, $B equals that thing. So that's what $B looks like, and this is what invoke REST method would have just spat out, by the way, by default. It automatically does that. JSON parsing for you. So $B equals $A, convert from JSON. Okay. We've got these both here. I remember there being this issue where if I did like select object, current user URL, maybe, that works. Maybe it's format list that fails here. No, that works too. I know what you're talking about. It's like, yeah, wow, that's better than I expected.
Somebody fixed it while you weren't looking.
Well, this is old Windows PowerShell, which means that should be the worst of all things. But I think I know what you're talking about, and I vaguely remember we fixed something in New Realm. So unfortunately, I can't confirm exactly what you're talking about.
We can follow up in the notes later.
Yeah.
We totally can. Ah, here we go. Convert from JSON sends objects converted from a JSON array as an array through the pipeline. This may very well be what you're talking about. So, like, it's, yeah, there's crazy amount of stuff that people have figured out now that we've just opened up the GitHub issues to everyone to complain. But yeah, we will certainly get that figured out. Yep. Okay, so...
Thanks. Didn't mean to derail. Thank you.
No, you didn't derail at all. That's totally fine. Like I said, JSON and invoke web request REST method were huge. That was sort of where we focused all of our efforts for the alphas and in getting to beta.1. So, so I'll also show here, this is, we implemented like custom methods. So you can do a, like just instead of a get or a put or a post or whatever, you can just do any method you want. Go 3, another great one from PowerCode. I don't know, what was the issue here? Get process where object name equals Chrome. Ah, he added the parent property to the get process object as a note. So I have a bunch of Chrome running, and so I basically get process all the Chrome objects, and then I look at the parent property. What's fun here is the parent of every Chrome is Chrome, except for a couple. Right, because that's, I think this one is a Uber host of all Chromes, right? So kind of interesting. iSaznov fixed a misspelling. I mean, it's just misspellings, right? This is BIOS serial number on BIOS. Let's see. On Windows PowerShell. Just silly stuff. BIOS. Yep, there it is. BIOS serial number. No I. Right? I mean, really, like that thing would have been stuck like that for 7 years, even if we knew about it, unless someone had contributed that as a fix. So yeah, same thing with the copyright here. I think we finally got rid of it. 09 on V2. 2016 on Windows PowerShell, I promise, and 2017 on Beta 1. I think we automatically generate it now, like at build time or something like that. So great stuff. So this is all awesome, right? The little stuff, the long tail of annoying bugs that we've all lived with for 10 years. Thank God they're finally getting fixed. Okay, what about the cool new stuff, like the big stuff, right? So .NET Standard 2.0. This thing is huge. This, so there's a great blog post if you Google .NET Standard 2. This is a great place to start this GitHub repo. This introducing .NET Standard blog is phenomenal. Explains sort of what's going on here with Net Standard. This repo has an awesome FAQ. I highly recommend you to check out if you're interested in this sort of thing. Docs FAQ, yeah. So so what's going on here? So basically, we had these two CLRs, right? In one world, we have full CLR .NET Framework, and in another world, we have .NET Core, right? And for those of you, has anyone in the room played with Nano? I know you have, Michael.
3, 4 of us, half the room.
Okay. So with Nano, we put out the first version of PowerShell Core, which was PowerShell Core V 5.1. And I'm just going to go ahead and show you me now because I don't have anything super interesting to show here yet. So we put out PowerShell Core 5.1, and it was missing a ton of stuff, right? Like even with PowerShell Core now, there's all these commands that are missing. All these modules had to be like slowly ported over time for Nano Server. You know, the network adapter commandlets or the disk management commandlet storage, whatever, right? All that stuff needed to be ported piecemeal by the teams that owned those modules. And a lot of that was because the surface area of .NET Core is significantly smaller than the surface area for .NET Framework. So they had to work around the lack of APIs that are available, right? So that was .NET Core 1.0, .NET Core 1.1. And they basically said, hey, we want people to be able to develop DLLs that work across both .NET Framework and .NET Core. So they came up with this thing called .NET Standard. Right? And .NET Standard 1.3 and .NET Standard 1.6, you had to compile against that thing, and it would give you a DLL that would load in .NET Framework 4.6.1, and it would load in .NET Core 1.0. But it still required that you like shrink your surface area and get your API set down. With .NET Core 2.0, they're introducing something awesome called .NET Standard 2.0. So you can now compile your thing against .NET Standard 2.0, which has roughly double the API surface area of .NET Core 1.1, and you'll get something that'll load in .NET Core 2.0 and .NET Framework 4.6.1. They're calling it 99% of .NET Framework 4.6.1 with an asterisk. So it's roughly everything that was available in 4.6, with a few things missing here and there. But relatively speaking, they're minor things that are easier to work around in the core CLR world. So that all makes sense to everybody. Can I get some nodding heads, Michael? Is that, yeah?
Yeah,
okay.
Much and many nodding heads.
Here's the black magic. The black magic is that with .NET Standard 2.0 and .NET Core 2.0, if you're within that API set defined by Standard 2.0, you don't have to recompile. So there's something, it is interpreted language compatible, or IL compatible, between .NET Framework 4.6.1 and .NET Core 2.0, which means that in PowerShell Core 6, I can do an add type against a 10-year-old DLL that was never built for .NET Standard or .NET Core, that is no longer being maintained by anyone, and as long as that thing fits within the Standard 2.0 APIs, which are 99% of the 4.6.1 APIs, that DLL will load. It also means that any modules dependent on those type of DLLs will load. Which means that I can drop PowerShell Core 6 on a Windows 7 machine, and you can't do this yet because we had to do some hacks and crazy stuff, but we will be able to, we have a prototype of this working, drop PowerShell Core 6 on a Win 7 machine and load the Hyper-V module that's shipped in Windows 7 on PowerShell Core. Freaking awesome.
What?
Right? Yeah, I know. Now, this already works for like CDXML stuff, because CDXML and SIM is all magic as well, which means that, for instance, I'm in beta 1 here, right? And I go to Windows System 32.
You're sharing your face and not whatever you're...
Yeah, that's right. That's right. Nobody wants to see my face. To Windows System 30. So I'm in beta 1, right? I go to Windows PowerShell v1.0 modules, right? And I've got this whole directory full of modules. So none of these are in my PS module path right now, right? And we're working through a way, because this is like the PowerShell Core PS module path, right? So we're working through a way that you can essentially say, hey, I don't care, like just try to like add the Windows PowerShell PS module path and try to load modules, right? Because for a lot of these, when I do, what the hell did I just click on? Oh, I'm moving the window. Scheduled tasks. Oh, I don't need that trailing slash. I hate that bug. That just loads. I can use get scheduled task. Boom. Like that was a Windows PowerShell module. It works just fine, right? And that's because we have all this voodoo with the CDXML files. Right, but what about a module that doesn't have a CDXML file, right? Like Windows Update. Can I just import this thing? Hell yeah, you can. Right?
Wait,
so now I have Windows Update. Oh,
does that mean like the older SharePoint, like the commandlets for SharePoint 2010 or older exchanges, you could load with Core too?
Possibly. The problem that we have right now is how do we know whether or not the DLLs that are shipped with those products, whether they fit within that .NET Standard 2.0 surface area, right?
Sure.
On the one hand, you can just try it.
Fair.
Try catch. All right, got it.
Exactly. On the other hand, you know, we're trying to sort of proactively do this, especially with the DLLs built into Windows. So we're going through two exercises right now. One is to take every DLL on Windows and run it against these API scan utilities to find out whether or not they fit within the .NET Standard 2.0 surface area. The other one that we're doing is to get every module on the gallery and every single required assembly. We're trying to run those through the same tools to find out what percentage of them work, right? So that's one effort. Like how screwed or how awesome are we? On the other side, there's one major hurdle, and I say you can't do this exactly verbatim today. The major hurdle is that there is no concept of a GAC in .NET Core. The GAC is the Global Assembly Cache. It is essentially a registry or a manifest of DLLs that are globally accessible to every .NET application on a machine, right? So today, if I go and try to load Hyper-V, which I don't have on this machine because it's not running Hyper-V, but what's another one? Does anybody know one that doesn't use CDXML? Unfortunately, we did a pretty good job of getting everybody to use that. Yeah, that's all CDXML. But if you try to load it today and say, hey, I have this required assembly, right? If that assembly was in the same directory as the module, it would try to load that, and if it was standard compliant, it would just it's not in there, it's in the GAC. And so what we have to do is implement some hacks that basically say, hey, I'm trying to load a Windows PowerShell module. Can you go look in these well-known directories to load some DLLs that are probably where they should be if they're in the GAC, right? So that's something that we're working through right now. We're just trying to make that transparent to the user, whether that's works automatically out of the box, or we require you to enable some kind of compatibility mode with a commandlet. Either way, it's a bit of a hack, and we're working through it right now, but it's a pretty high priority. But yes, it does mean that you can install PowerShell 6 on a machine that's got Exchange 2010, and while they won't support you in this scenario because they haven't tested it, you can certainly give it a shot yourself, and in many cases, a lot of these things we expect to just work. So you're at least not in a position where you've quote unquote tainted your machine by installing WMF5, on a box that's running Exchange 2010 and they don't support WMF5, and now you're just SOL. You can actually play here, right? And so you can keep running those scripts in Windows PowerShell, and then just for the heck of it, run one of them on 6. And if everything explodes, well, that's not a big deal. You didn't even have to reboot, right? So that's kind of our current thinking there.
So I have a quick question regarding 6 and the release. I think there's actually an issue out there, right, that tracks what needs to be done before you'll go release on 6.0? I think I've seen that.
Yes. So there is the I'll put it up right here. This was the sort of quick and dirty way to get out what it is that we were trying to accomplish.
That issue at the top looks familiar.
Just made that. Oh, I thought you just made it. I thought it was going to be seconds ago. What we want to do. Yeah, it's the help system is something we're working through, like front to bottom right now. Front to back, top to bottom, one of those. So this is not been worked great for a couple weeks. It got everybody talking about the right stuff. I need to go back through and make sure that all of this has sort of been triaged over. But this was sort of the checklist of like, so I get all this crap done. And I got 20 up thumbs, like me, right? So that's the other thing. If you want something and you don't have any, anything to say about it, just that I want this, you can add your reaction to a comment and give it a +1, which is awesome because you flood us with comments and we want something. So what we're doing now as sort of the way to track projects is we're using the GitHub projects feature. And so roughly every one of the L1 bullet points in that original giant monolithic list has translated over to a project here, right? And so we've got, the developer experience, semantic versioning. This probably is going to go under the developer experience pretty soon here. Usability on Linux and Mac. So how do we deal with all these differences on other platforms like path limiters, case sensitivity, permissions, file encodings, all this crazy crap. The different kinds of remoting we're doing. And we'll talk about that more a little bit in a minute. Our telemetry, which we do have a little bit of right now. Right now, we're only shipping 2 pieces of information: the git commit ID and your OS version. Nothing else. So if you look at PS version table here, I just want to be clear about this because I know it's always a touchy thing. We ship this string and we ship this string. That's it. No, it all gets anonymized through application insights. We are talking about adding things there, but we will go through the RFC process, which I'll discuss in a minute, in order to get there. So which means you guys have plenty of time to vet it, give us feedback, tell us we're crazy and that you don't want more telemetry and whatever. But we are making all the telemetry public so you can see how we're using it, what exists. It's all in that community dashboard I showed earlier because we don't want to just collect telemetry for the sake of collecting telemetry. All of this is so that we can make the product better. And if you want to turn that off, it's really easy. You just go into PS Home. And by the way, that telemetry only impacts PowerShell core or whatever instance of it has this file in PS Home. I'm going to kill this because it's taken forever. Okie doke. Thank you. So there's a file. We had to do this quick and dirty again to get it out there. This says delete me to disable console host telemetry. If you delete that file, it will disable console host telemetry. That's it. That's all it is. We'll have commandlets. We've got a way to do like startup configurations that we're going through an RFC for right now. There's going to be a way to do this in a more programmatic way. But today we wanted it to be discoverable. We didn't want to pretend like we were hiding anything. Like we've got this file called that. We have console host telemetry. If you want to get rid of it, that's what you should do. So anyway, if you click through to any of these, like for instance, remoting over SSH, you'll see that we've got a high priority bucket of items. We've got a low priority bucket of items. We've got a completed bucket of items. Thank you. And we're triaging more stuff. So over here we've got, oh, somebody's got a new card. Yes, assigned to me, high priority is a demo script for remoting scenarios, which had I made already would have made today a lot easier, but I don't. So we're going to do it ad hoc. And on that note, I want to ask if there's any more questions, and then I want to dive in on some of these SSH demos.
I have one more question for SSH. The tangential topic, so I don't go into it too deep, but the question around .NET Standard 2.0. So I know the original idea behind .NET Core was a much smaller footprint and much smaller attack surface work rate than Server Nano. With .NET Standard having 99% of what's available in .NET Framework, what are the benefits gained from .NET Standard versus .NET Framework? Where's that line go?
Great question. Great question. So for those of you that might not have heard that on the recording, basically, hey, if you got the API back up to parity with .NET Framework, then why the hell did you do .NET Core, right? Like it's supposed to be faster, lighter. You know, it's a trimmed down version of .NET Framework, right? So the truth is, there's a couple answers here, and one or two of them I'm going to hand wave because they're over my head. I'm not enough of a developer to tell you how the hell they pulled this off. But for one thing, .NET Core is cross-platform, right? So right off the bat, I mean, they've now mitigated this whole world of Mono, Xamarin, you know, all the .NET natives and UWP and all this. There's all this crazy stuff out there. Like .NET Core 2.0 with .NET Standard 2.0 is like something that is available everywhere. You can always depend on it. Awesome. Performance, this is where I get hand wavy. I have no idea how the hell they did this. They cleaned up a bunch of the crappy implementations or I guess just not as modern implementations of APIs in the past. .NET Core is blowing benchmarks out of the water. It's blazing fast. It's way faster than .NET Framework. If you look at, I just saw benchmarks get published the other day. It was like just server backends, like, you know, the nodes and the Rubies and the Pythons and all this stuff, like Nginx running PHP, you know. And I think .NET Core, this was on Linux. .NET Core was like 7th in the top 10. And the first 6 were all like stuff no one's ever heard of that doesn't, you know, or super custom builds of Nginx built for some embedded scenario. Like they were all these like forked community projects for like performance optimization and constraint scenarios. And like baseline .NET Core blew them out of the water. So I don't know how they did it. I mean, it's frankly the fact that this .NET Core 2.0 thing worked out the way it was supposed to me is a miracle because I have no idea how they pulled it off. It really works in that the I don't know, something's in the pudding. What's in the pudding? The pudding? The something's in the pudding. I don't know.
As a kind of follow-up side note to that, have you seen the stats around Kestrel?
No.
So if you want to giggle a little bit, look those up at some point. because it shows like the requests per second for IIS, for Nginx, etc., and then it shows Kestrel, and like in some cases it's an order of magnitude or more between that and IIS for responses. It is ridiculously fast.
It is ridiculously fast. I will say the one thing that they cut out, so they explicitly cut out from .NET Framework, is all the UI stuff, right? So a lot of that was Windows specific. Fortunately for us, it doesn't really impact PowerShell commandlets, but we're talking like WinForms, WPF. They did some analysis of like all NuGet DLLs or something, and like 70% of them were .NET Standard compatible, and like the remaining 30%, most of that was UI stuff. So quick question, Joey, is Standard cross-platform or is only core? So Standard's not actually a thing. Standard is just a definition of an API set. So you have a CLR that is Standard 2.0 compliant in that it implements all of the APIs that are defined by Standard 2.0. So Core 2.0 is cross-platform and is Standard 2.0 compliant. .NET Framework 4.6.1 is Standard 2.0 compliant. Implement the entirety of the Standard 2.0 API set. But 4.6.1 is and will never be cross-platform. Right.
So if you're going cross-platform, Core 2 is going to be the way to go if you're trying to be able to have the same commandlets or, some of the same functionality, at least put it this way, across different OS platforms.
Is it
right? So you essentially target .NET Standard at compile time. So there's like a compile time target in Visual Studio or in .NET CLI, the tooling. You target that thing, it builds a DLL that will load in Core 2.0 and will load in Framework 4.6.1.
So I'm going to let you get back to SSH, but would it be fair to say that if you target core the .NET Standard 2.0, you're making the platform a runtime decision then, rather than
that is exactly right. So essentially, when we build the DLLs, we get to make a decision: do we host these in .NET Framework or do we host these in .NET Core, right? And so that's a decision that could be left up to an application developer if they're taking a dependency on a third-party library. Right, like say I'm picking up a library off of NuGet, I'm going, oh, Newtonsoft.json, I want to host this in a full CLR application, or I want to host this in a core CLR application. As PowerShell, we're kind of making that decision for you because PowerShell itself is a .NET Core app, right? And so the runtime that PowerShell is being hosted in is .NET, or that PowerShell 6 is being hosted in is .NET Core, whether you like it or not. But you can build your module in such a way that it will also work on Windows PowerShell on top of 4.6.1. Now, I will say that we're building something to .NET Standard. We're very preemptively calling it PowerShell Standard. And this is basically like if you want to build a commandlet or host PowerShell in your own application, you use this assembly, and it will only expose APIs. This is a miss pull request here. This will only expose APIs. You'll see, I'm not going to open this thing up. It's 11,000 lines. It's essentially our whole public API that is in both PowerShell Core 6 and in Windows PowerShell 3 through 5.1. So the idea here is if you target .NET Standard 2.0 as your compile target, and you include this reference assembly for building your commandlets or for hosting PowerShell, then your DLLs or modules that you build will work from 3 to 6. Full stop.
One final question, and it's a short answer, by the way, and you may not even be able to answer this, or you're not allowed to answer this, I don't know. But do you foresee .NET Framework in Windows Server, Windows Client, being replaced by .NET Core, .NET Standard in the future?
Being replaced by .NET Core, so it's hard for me because I don't want to I speak to other teams' plans and that sort of thing. I can't see that far out in the future, and they're kind of not. I mean, I don't really know. I don't have any secret information there, but I will tell you that as an end user, just being well informed, I know that .NET Framework is a supported feature of Windows. It's supported in Windows 7. They just came out with .NET Framework 4.7. It has to stay in the box and remain supported for as long as we support that operating system. And so I would expect, unless there was a major change in policy, that if .NET Core were to ever show up in a Windows image, it would be side by side with .NET Framework. I mean, the amount of dependency on .NET Framework is just massive. You know, the fact they put out a new version should, I think, tell you not going away anytime soon.
One last question.
Totally fair. Hey, I'm not in any hurry, guys. We're more constrained by your timelines than mine, believe me.
And I think this is what you were saying, but if I were to go, or my team, right, starts writing modules, and just write, you know, straight PowerShell, not in C# or anything, but is there plans for a tool or something that says, hey, PowerShell, during this module or this module can only target either in the schema or in the module itself, you can only access things that are in standard 2, so that I know it's...
I lost you there for a second, sorry. Access what?
That you can only access PowerShell Standard, right? I don't want you to be able to let me write or run commands that aren't part of standard.
Right. So I should caveat that PowerShell Standard is a great question. For those of you on the recording, it's basically, hey, I don't care about any of that C# business. I'm writing PowerShell modules. I know PowerShell commandlets. Like, how do I make sure I'm writing a pure PowerShell module in script that works from 3 to 6? Great question. So PowerShell Standard is really for the C# .NET. You know, you wouldn't have to worry about that kind of stuff. What we'd also like to do in the meantime is create a bunch of script analyzer rules, right? That basically say, hey, you're using a commandlet that's not available here, you're using a commandlet that's not available there, you're using a language feature that might not be implemented in older versions, you're using, I mean, you know, you could be using DSC or something, and you know, hey, this isn't going to work on 3. And so we want there to be a way, project, hey, I've got this PowerShell settings file, this script analyzer settings file, you know, I want to say this thing is targeting 3 to 6. Warn me when I'm about to do something that's not going to work within those constraints. The hardest part there is actually building a data set. So it's like, what commandlets are in 4? You'd think that we just had that list laying around. We do not. And so there was actually somebody on Reddit like 4 or 5 months ago that told me that he wrote rules in his own repo and would love to submit them into the main repo. And I need to follow up with that guy because he did all the work of standing up to VMs and like figuring out exactly what's everywhere. But yeah, that's what we want to do. You know, essentially when you fire up VS Code here, there should be like little green squigglies. Like today, if I use an alias here, like ls, right, pipe to something, yeah, this gives me a little green squiggly and it says, hey, ls is an alias. Aliases can introduce possible problems, make scripts hard to maintain. Please considering changing alias to its full content, right? And I can actually, this little light bulb comes up when I click on that guy. I can actually say replace, and it will just stick get child item in there. Pretty cool stuff. We want to do that for like sorted by 6, right? And maybe it replaces it with a snippet that is, you know, a replacement, a functional replacement for the same thing, right? And so that's where our heads are at. It's just we got to go write those rules, and it's going to take a little bit of time. I think.
Cool. All right. Nobody else has any more questions that'll derail you from SSH. So let's turn over to that.
All right, so I know you guys can thank Michael. You're getting an extended version today because he made it very clear that key authorization was important to him. So I apologize in advance. I'm dealing with Microsoft firewalls here. I'm going one box to another, and God knows what could happen. I was doing this on my laptop throughout meetings today, and my laptop's only got 8 gigs of RAM, so I can't stand up the fancy 64 gigabyte cluster that the rest of you have on your giant. So let's get rid of everything. Or the 64. No, they don't give me a 16 gig. No, I got an 8 gig. I know I've seen those 64 gig Lenovo's though. They're pretty sweet. So let's see.
I think Mike Robbins had the 64 gig.
He does.
And he ran 500 plus nodes on it. It was like
400 nano server, and he's like, oh, I'm going to go trade containers, and he's like, going to get 5,000 nano server containers running on it or something. So I meant to write this all down in a script, but I'm kind of winging it, so let's do it. First of all, OpenSSH, where can you go get it? GitHub PowerShell Win32 OpenSSH. is where it's at. It used to be just OpenSSH, and GitHub's cool, so it redirects to the new name. This is where you get it. The releases tab here. We've got a zip. You unzip that thing. You go to the folder where it's at, and as admin, you run install sshd.ps1. Unfortunately, that's where we're at right now. If you want keep install, you install SSH LSA. I'm getting there, don't worry. So Darwin.js, awesome dude. In his GitHub repository, he has, and I think we're going to try and get this integrated into the mainline repo at some point. It's not just a chocolatey package. It's actually a like Uber installer script. And if I just, here we go. So his blog, cloudywindows.com, he's got this OpenSSH universal automated installer that does all kinds of crazy stuff. Check out this blog post, cloudywindows.com. He's making it way easier to install, and we may ask him in the future to like wrap this up as a package management provider, or help him with that, because ultimately I think that he's done a lot of the hard work already. He's got this PR here too for same thing for PowerShell, so he's doing cool stuff. Check that out. I will also tease this yet, because I'll tell you it doesn't work, but it does do something. And it's going to work. Walking Cat on Twitter will know when this works before I do, because I don't have any insight into when these insider builds go out. But manage optional features. Boom. That's in apps and features. You'll see I've got, I don't have these installed right now, but if I were to hit add a feature, and I go down to these got to load and do all kinds of crazy stuff because I'm on an internal build or whatever. But this is going to populate a giant list filled with mostly Chinese handwriting packs. Nestled there between the Mandarin and the Portuguese or something is OpenSSH server beta, OpenSSH client beta, and that will install OpenSSH to Windows, System 32, OpenSSH. It's glorious. So that's actually, that will be the feature on demand that will ship. And as soon as that's usable and public in RS3 Insider builds, or excuse me, in Insider builds, I will have a blog out to tell you how to do that and why that's awesome. But in the meantime, that version will always be somewhat behind where we're at with this one, which is why I like the Xcopy and the install sshd.ps1. That basically just adds a service, actually two services, to your box. One of those is SSH Agent. The other is SSHD. So we got SSHD and SSH Agent. These are not to be confused with the... if you've installed the developer mode, you may have another two services called SSH Server Broker and SSH Server Proxy. That's another Microsoft SSH Server implementation that's somewhat limited, that was used for some other stuff, hopefully going away in the near future to be replaced with our stuff. But yeah, that's just, don't be confused there. Turn that one off if it's running, because it will squat on port 22 and break stuff unless you use non-standard ports. By the way, I'm getting a little ahead of myself. Does everyone in the room know what OpenSSH is? I can just give a quick.
Everybody good? Anybody want a quick overview? All right. No, you can skip the overview. It sounds like everybody's okay.
Awesome. I mean, yeah, it's basically just, in addition to being used for terminal remoting, it's awesome for all kinds of other stuff like traffic tunneling and file transfers and secure FTP and all kinds of crazy stuff. So OpenSSH is seriously awesome, and was one of the things I missed most when I finally gave up my Linux addiction and came to work for Microsoft. I still run all kinds of Linux. Yeah. So we've got SSH here. Great. What does that do? Well, first of all, because I've got that one and the Git one, and like if you guys ever install Git for Windows, you may have Git Bash installed, and that adds something to your path. So I have a function in my profile called Which that basically tells me, it does like Git command SSH, and then dot source. So this guy, you want to make sure the SSH you're running is actually the one that we've shipped and that you put down. And of course, it's useful to install that to Readme path. I've got OpenSSH right here. So great. I want to install or go to a Linux machine, right? I've already set up SSHD on my Linux machine. It's got an account called Joey Aiello, and I just want to do some basic password authentication over there. So I'm just going to do Joey Aiello CentOS, or actually Joey Aiello at Joey Aiello-CentOS. So this is my username. This is my host name, right? And this is going to do plain old SSH remoting over to that machine. Right, so if I do that, I'm going to say, hey, your known host is different, and that's because I forgot to delete a file, and this is a brand new VM. I say, yes, I don't care, great. And now here I am, I'm on a Linux box, right? Beautiful. I've got color, we've got like the Xterm rendering now inside of the Windows 10 console host. We do work down level to Windows 7, but it's highly unlikely that you're going to get this nice, pretty, colorful experience. The terminal might break all over the place. We've said for those OSs, you might want to use ConEmu or Commander, because right now the Windows team doesn't have any plans to bring all the new conhost improvements down level to other OSs. But if you're on Win 10, you're going to get this great experience out of the box. If I can do anything I can do on a Linux machine, it's CentOS 7. I'm literally just like sitting in a pseudo terminal on that box now. This is not anything new or that exciting, other than the fact that I'm going to be able to do this with out-of-the-box tools very soon. So great. What about key authentication? Right. So I don't want to have to type my password. I did type my password, right? Did that happen? No, I didn't. Because I already did this thing. So, okay, great.
But now you can show us password.
I can show you password off now. Yeah. So what we're going to do, let's see if SSH remove is there. Oh, all I can do is SSH add. Okay, great. So we're going to do this instead. I'm going to go and I'm going to remote over to that machine, and I'm going to delete the file. Right? And so in .ssh, we have this authorized keys file. The way SSH works is public-private key pairs. Right? This is my public key. This is nothing secret. It gets to sit on any server where I have permissions to be. I get to go put it in my .ssh folder, and when I have a private key that authenticates against this public key, then I can log into that server without using my password, right? If I were to remove this thing, well, all of a sudden, when I try to log in again, so I've exited my session, trying to log in, it's going to prompt me for a password. So now I have to put this password in, right? And my authorized keys are no longer there. So, key auth, I can essentially run. This is a really bad bug we gotta fix in Conhost. I'm sorry. Just doing this slow LS. So I basically went to just some random directory, and you should make sure that this directory is well ACLed and that no one has access to this thing, because these are essentially your passwords, right? Like anyone that gets a hold of these files can be you on any machine. And the way that I created these, I said SSH keygen-a. That generated all of these key types. So each of these is a different crypto algorithm: DSA, ECDSA, RSA, I think is the one that we're currently using. If you want to be super secure and elliptical, I think the 25519 is the way to go. But RSA is ubiquitous and supported everywhere. So I did that SSH keygen-a, and it gave me private and public key pairs. So the private keys are the ones that no one can ever have. The public keys are the ones I can share with anybody I want and be in no danger, right? And that I will actually put on the remote machine. Right here, I'm actually going to use SCP, which is secure copy. It uses the SSH protocol to copy a file. And I'm going to say I want to take my public RSA key, right? And I want to copy it to my CentOS machine as myself, and in the location home jiello.ssh authorized keys. So that's going to put it, that's a file authorized keys, no file extensions on Linux, right? And if I do that, I should get prompted for a password. I put that in, and we'll remotely copy the file over. Awesome. My public key is over there. Now what? Well, there's another issue, which is that I need to give that thing the proper file permissions. Right? SSH basically barfs if anyone else has read or write access except for me. When I SSH in, it's going to read that file, but if anyone else has access to that file, then they can change my public key and authenticate as me with a different private key, right? So I need to make sure that that file is locked down before SSH will let me in. So I go here, log in. I had to put my password in because, again, that file's not modded correctly. So I go to CD, SSH, right? And if I look in this thing, you'll see this RWRWR. This means that I have read-write, my group has read-write, everyone else in the machine has read. So I don't want anyone in my group to have read-write, and I don't want anyone else in the machine to have read, right? So what I need to do is I need to chmod 600 authorized keys, which will say that so each of these, this is an octal, the 600, so the 6 means I get read-write, the 0 means my group gets nothing, and the 0 means everyone else gets nothing, right? And so now this is RW. Great, let's log out. I would have to say, I would have to give a path to my private key. I'd say RSA key, that's the private key. And then when I log in, it's just going to log in, right? Great. But maybe I don't want to specify the path there. Maybe I put this in a super lockdown encrypted folder that I have to add passwords to and all this stuff for it to work. So instead, I do an SSH add, right? An SSH add, I can essentially add any key I want to the local SSH agent service running on the box. So if I say get service SSH, I've got SSHD and I've got SSH agent. SSH agent is, you think of this as even more secure string, right? This basically is a little over my head, but it keeps like an encrypted version of your key running in memory so that as long as you're logged in as yourself, you don't have to specify a key or a password. Right, so I do SSH add with that service running against the key, and it will say that because I think I've already added this one. Let's just go ahead and restart this service just in case. Oh, I'm not an admin.
Oh.
No problem. I shouldn't have to be one to do an SSH add, but I do have to do one to restart that service. Yeah. I think it's because I already added the key. You can take it for my word. The reason that all this worked before without a password is because I had already done all that. So when I do this and I don't specify the key, I get logged in automatically. Beautiful, right? This is all true on Windows. So I've got another box. It's running SSHD. It's called Joey Aiello Backup. And this thing also does not have my authorized keys file, apparently. So I need, I know why. Because, so this guy also does have my authorized keys. It's a domain account, right? This is my domain joined workstation, right? So there's 3 ways that I can specify this is a domain account. I can not put anything, because I am Readme /Joey Aiello. So when I log in, look at that, magic, right? I'm now inside of CMD, right? I don't have LS because it's CMD. Similarly, if I wasn't Aiello backup -L Redmond /Joey Aiello, this will do the same thing. L is like your login name. I think I can also do @ so I could say Joey Aiello @Redmond @Joey Aiello -backup. That's going to do the same thing. I can also do, I think I need to escape the / if I use the / syntax.
Oh God.
So it's like Redmond double /Joey Aiello. Nope. No, I think we fixed it then. Good job on us. Look at that magic.
Look at that.
That's how it should work. So it does, right? Great. And if I look here, there's one difference here is that my authorized keys file on Windows, I actually need to ACL it so that a service called ntservice /sshd, which is a local service, has read and only read access to that file. So in addition to me having rewrite, there's essentially like this SSHD is running under the context of an NT service user called SSHD. So that service account needs read access to your authorized keys, or it cannot spawn a worker to give you authentication. In our wiki on Win32 OpenSSH, we have a document here called where'd it go? I know it's here. Whoop. Who deleted it? That's who deleted it. That's okay. If I look here in the pages and I look for file security protection, so I'm going to make this again, but basically this design wasn't fully baked, and so we put out a release version 0013, and then we pulled it back because we didn't want people to do a bunch of work to reackle their stuff and then tell them to reackle it again, because that's how we wanted to do it. But there's some helper functions in here that will probably eventually ship in a better place. This one makes you the owner of a file with full control over it and gets rid of everyone else and all other inherited ACLs on that file. So you should run that against your authorized keys. That's basically the equivalent of the chmod 600. And then this one will actually add a permission that you want. It's a helper wrapper around setACL. So basically, you say, hey, my authorized keys, give them read access. You have to do the same thing with the host keys. So when you set up a server, you generate some keys so that there's like a fingerprint to match up, that when you come to a server, you're actually talking to the server that you expect to talk to. That's that error I'm getting about known hosts when I connect to my Linux box. It's because the fingerprint that I have doesn't match the host keys on that box. But you have to do the same thing here. So you have to ACL and make sure SSHD has read permissions to those things. So that's the sort of long-winded thing. So let's just watch magic happen now. So let's see here. I'm running in PowerShell. This is PowerShell 6. Right? What we've done is we've taken PowerShell remoting protocol, which is a thin, relatively thin serialization protocol that has been funneled over WSMan, or its Windows implementation of the WSMan protocol, WinRM, right? So today, if I do enter PS session, right, and I connect to a computer name, that's essentially going to take this PowerShell remoting protocol. It's going to funnel it over WinRM to use the transport layer, and that gives us Kerberos and CredSSP if you want it. These session configurations and all this sort of thing that sort of works well with PowerShell in an object-oriented world. Well, we said we've got SSH already on these Linux machines, so why don't we take that PowerShell remoting protocol that sends objects over the wire and treats everything like an object on the client side, right? It's the way that when I do enter PS session, like my command history remains intact even as I enter and exit sessions. So why don't we just funnel all that crap over, all that good stuff over SSH, right? So now I can essentially download PowerShell 6. I add a line to my SSHD config that registers PowerShell 6 as what's called an OpenSSH subsystem. And I can say, instead of computer name, I can export. That's going to give me a different set of parameters here, one of those being host name. And I'm going to say, hey, go ahead and connect to this CentOS box. Now I can specify my username. This is going to go through, it's actually going to shell out to ssh.exe. So typically you'd be password prompted here when specifying your username, but I'm probably not going to be because I have that private key set up. But when I do this, it's going to throw that known host thing again. And when I connect, I am in a PowerShell session on a Linux machine.
Wait. So that's PowerShell on the Linux machine?
That is PowerShell 6 on the Linux machine, registered as an OpenSSH subsystem, with PowerShell remoting protocol being funneled over OpenSSH.
Wait,
So I get tab completion.
Wait, so PowerShell 6 is on that Linux machine?
Yes. What I showed you before was just landing in Bash. Now I'm showing you landing in PowerShell. Right?
Okay.
So this is now, I'm on a Linux box. You know, I can run hostname, right? Or I can say, I don't know do we have a get host name? I don't think so. Get host? Yeah, the get host, that works. So it's running in server remote host. It's not our get host name, but.
Get command ls.
But yeah, I mean, this is what it looks like, right? I mean, I have all these commands now. I'm in my local session, right? This is pretty cool. Like I said, when I exit this thing, I've still got all that stuff in my command history. Now I can just as easily create a new PS session object that will persist. So we'll do the same thing. And when this object gets created, I have, you'll see we've specified this as SSH5. We've given it a default name that's related to SSH, so you know what it is. It's on my CentOS box. I'm going to go ahead and just make another PS session object, and I'm going to target my other box. And I'm not going to specify a username because I'm on the domain here, so it should just be me. It should do the same thing. So now I have S, I have S2, and I can do crazy stuff like invoke command, get process. So I need that in a script block, right? Be verbose here so everybody knows what I'm doing. And I can give it objects. And I can run processes against a Windows and a Linux machine in the same invocation. You'll actually see these are mixed in right here, CentOS and backup. I've got OneDrive running next to a bunch of XFS stuff, right? And it's all the same object. Pretty freaking cool.
Quick question about the SSH authentication. Now, when you, I'll hop back over there so you can see my face. So when you opened up a session to the Windows box over the SSH protocol and didn't specify your username, did it do Kerberos or did it do the key? Did key, right?
It did the key, and the only thing it did is that by not specifying a username, it used the username that I already had. So my laptop, I am my domain /Joey. On my other box, I'm domain /Joey. So it just said, try to authenticate as the same user. And the first thing it tried to do is go into my private keys stored with SSH agent in memory. And because those keys matched up, it passed through just fine.
Awesome. So follow-up question then. Right now, if I wanted to use key pair off across my domain, I would have to drop the public key in all the places.
Yes.
Is there potentially an end game for us where we could load the public key into AD and then rotate?
That's what everyone asks. I think it'd be freaking cool. I don't see any reason why AD wouldn't want to do that. I have not even started talking to them yet because we've only just reached a point of maturity that like what I just showed works. But I think it's totally worth exploring. I mean, my dream goal that I've discussed with no one outside of my own team is like, hey, you should be able to go like throw your private key or throw your public key into like AAD, authenticate, against arbitrary domains in Azure Active Directory, regular Active Directory on-prem should be able to associate with that public key, should be associated with your Microsoft identity, your MSA, your live ID, all those things. Like there's no like I use Keybase. Right, which I don't. For those of you that don't know, Keybase is a way to basically associate your public key with some proof that you put on social media. So in other words, like there's a few things on like my Hacker News profile, and my Facebook profile, and all these things that say, hey, I'm this guy on Keybase, and I trust the public key that's over there. And all those things add up and people can just add me on Keybase and know that I'm really me, and encrypt documents and sign things and send them to and from me, encrypt stuff or decrypt stuff that I send them. And so, you know, it's just a nice way to do all that management in the cloud without having to worry about someone stealing your private keys because they're still on your rig. So that's kind of like, I would love to get there. Like, in the meantime, I think we want to do PowerShell scripts that wrap up all that stuff I just showed so that you can say, hey, ship this to every server where this user is allowed to log in. You know, as part of that feature on demand, we should have some stuff that's there to, you know, help people out. Documentation needs to be massively improved. I mean, there's a ton of stuff we have to do, but it works.
Right.
So, you know, that's step one.
Yeah, that's pretty phenomenal.
There was one... I feel like there was one other thing I really wanted to show. I mean, it works the other way, by the way. So if you're going from a Linux box to a Windows machine, you can do regular SSH into the Windows machine and get CMD. From PowerShell 6 on a Linux box, you can do PowerShell remoting. Oh, there was one that I really wanted to show, which was WS man-based remoting. I know everybody's excited about it, but not everybody is allowed to just drop OpenSSH and Open Port 22 in their highly restricted enterprise environments, and they've already fought for 5 years to open all the WS man ports, right? So one thing that I can't really show because I don't have a VM set up with all this Hangout stuff, is that we do have working on. Actually, you know what we could show? Let's try this. Let's see if this works. That's not the one I wanted. I wanted this guy. So let's say that's in $S. Great, sitting around there. So this is my Linux box. And now we're in PowerShell on this box. So let's create a new PowerShell section to create. Go to what's my this guy. That's a Windows box. Username this guy. And named piped process has ended. Why is that? Do I have SSH here? Yes, I do. Oh no, that's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to do fun way. This guy.
Over PowerShell.
Old school, right? That should work. If it doesn't, I apologize. Firewalls and those things. Theoretically, like this is WS man-based remoting. Unfortunately, it only works with basic authentication and NTLM authentication. We don't support Kerberos today, and it's not currently tested. It's something people keep asking for. We've got a billion things to do, and it's just not making its way up the priority queue. But that's not to say we'll never do it. It just might have to wait till 6.1. This might have just killed my session.
Yay!
Yay! That double hop thing was not allowed. Well, that's control break. That's crazy something.
Nope.
It worked. I typed exit. So yeah, that's like on Linux, it's basic auth and Kerberos auth, or no, basic auth and NTLM. On a Mac, it's only basic auth because Apple purposefully limited their GSS API libraries to not support NTLM. So we don't have any way to do NTLM there, but. We also support the other direction. So if you want to do WS man-based remoting into a Linux server, the documentation is woefully inadequate and I need to update it, but you can do, you set up OMI, which is essentially WMI for Linux, and you download a provider for OMI, and then you can do WS man-based PowerShell remoting into your Windows box. And Michael's yawning now, so we gotta get to the end of this, and yeah. Who's that?
Quick question for you. For the Linux guys, when this comes, because I saw the release of Bash now no longer being just a Windows 10 Insider preview, they are releasing it to server. Would you have any qualms or thoughts about from a Linux box when you hop over and do SSH to go to the Bash shell instead of command line for Linux guys?
No, I mean, I think really this is a solved problem on Linux. One of the things that we've tried that kind of works, but we had to do some stuff to make things not break as much as they did, is changing the default shell on your Linux machine to PowerShell, so that actually when you do basic SSH authentication, you're on the server machine. You're not building a client context like PowerShell remoting does, but when you log in, you actually like hit a PowerShell endpoint instead of a bash endpoint. That like works for arbitrary shells on Linux already today, so you can do that with ZSH, Fish,
Right.
other ones, including PowerShell. I suspect that server will implement something like that going in the other direction. So, hey, when I SSH into this box, by default, bring me to CMD, bring me to Bash, bring me to PowerShell. And by the way, I freaking love Bash. I cannot be more excited that it's on Windows and going into server. I hadn't heard that it was going into server, but more the merrier. Whatever gets people the job done. And I actually have a blog post on the PowerShell blog about what Bash for Windows means for PowerShell if you're interested in hearing more about that. So, I mean, it's today the management APIs are not there for Bash. So if you want to manage a local system using Bash, you're going to have a really, really rough time because there's no WMI, there's no SIM, there's no CDXML, there's no, .NET. All this stuff is why we created PowerShell, is to glue these disparate management APIs together in one interface. So, but I think it'll be great for dropping in, Node containers or Ruby containers or Python containers and all these things that have some Bash scripts that work with them. The orchestration, automation, all this stuff. Yeah, that'll be awesome.
So what about GIA and SSH? Can I hit a GIA endpoint that way?
So today you cannot.
Okay.
It would require fundamental re-architecture in GIA. It's not impossible. I already have people talking about it. Very early preliminary design. I talked to a bunch of folks in Europe that are interested in that. But it would have to be heavily Linux skewed. The way that Linux does this is typically through what's called chrooting, which is to change the root directory to something that's higher up in the file system so that a user can't break out of quote-unquote chroot jail. That's something that would have to be exposed through GIA. Similarly, we might set like virtual permissions on files so you can't get access to things. We can certainly restrict, like I think the session configuration aspect may already work today with the WSMan-based remoting on OMI, although I'm starting to think in the way it works, but that aspect is certainly there in OMI. So I don't. It's hard to say. It's very early days, but GIA is a killer feature of PowerShell, and we should we want to get it lit up with SSH.
All right. Any further questions from the group? Anything else we want to see here? Nothing? Everybody good? Cool. Thank you so much for presenting, Joey.
You guys are awesome, man. I'm more than happy to do it. I had a blast. I know it's past 6 here. I'm sure you got to go figure out dinner and stuff, and I know it's late for you guys over there. So I appreciate you guys all staying and listening to me drone on and on for an hour and a half here. I really had a lot of fun for inviting me.
Yeah, it's been fantastic. The quality was great. So thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks, Joey.
You guys have an awesome user group out there. You're very welcome, and I hope that at one point I can make it out to St. Louis to see you guys all in the flesh.
Absolutely, that'd be fantastic. Yeah. All right, well, we will catch you later. Have a good night.
Definitely. Thank you so much, guys. Have a great night.
Bye.
Bye.